Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? That's Street 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category. For example, this week we want to find the best game that was called a clone of another game. My favourite GTA clone is Sleeping Dogs, the open-world undercover cop simulator that began life as True Crime Hong Kong, then subjected to a period of development hell, and was eventually released as Sleeping Dogs. It didn't do well enough to warrant a sequel, and there hasn't been a decent GTA clone ever since, meaning that, frankly, as a genre, its best days are well behind it. Speaking of which, I'm joined today. It was laboured, isn't it? They're getting more difficult, Tom, I'll be honest. I'm joined today, as ever, by Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. How you doing?
Hello. Yeah, today's topic is close to my heart.
Yeah, is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Think it through, Jim, for a second.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, I always forget about James. I hope he listens to this. I hope he doesn't listen to this. We're also joined by Associate Editor Alex and Guides Editor James. How you doing?
Good stuff.
Are you still smart in that you haven't won twice in a row, James?
Well, this time I'm absolutely reeling from the fact that you've just used the correct answer to this question in the intro, which obviously means that none of us have picked Sleeping Dogs.
None of you have picked Sleeping Dogs, yeah.
Which is what a disaster. Completely forgot about it. It's the correct answer to this question.
It is definitely the correct answer. Yeah, yeah, we've done it. It's 2 minutes in.
Bye.
Let's go. All right, no, we got to performatively carry on, unfortunately. Well, I mean, so it's all about clones. Video games is, I think, not uniquely, but there is a very strange place in this medium for clones of other things that are celebrated as clones of other things, you know. So yours, Tom, I'm not sure what yours is a clone of. Could you please explain?
Right, so years ago, I was sat at work. I was like, sometimes I was sat, when I was the actual full boss of my previous work, I just like, I don't really want to do much work today, I'll just play a game, right? So I think sometimes I reviewed games that I actually wasn't that bothered about because I just wanted to do something that wasn't boring spreadsheets or something. So a game came in called Axiom Verge, right?
I remember you getting excited about this, actually.
And I really did not, I wasn't that bothered about it particularly, but it was just that you had code in, it was quiet. It's like, I'll just give this a go, right? That does happen sometimes. Like some games get covered because it's quiet and you want something to do, right? So that is how I played this game. Mm-hmm. I think I was playing it on PS4 probably. Yeah. And Axiom Verge is actually probably one of my favourite games of the last 10 years. And it is a clone of Super Metroid or Metroid.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
And I, like, as a boy that grew up with a Master System and a Mega Drive, I'd never played Metroid before. My first real look at Metroid was on the GameCube, Metroid Prime. So I hadn't really played like the original Metroids in any form, and like I dabbled with some of like the other clone type games. But this is my first real go at a Metroid clone, so to speak. Yeah, and it's just brilliant. Like I wasn't expecting a great deal from it, and I just got completely obsessed with exploring the world, finding all the hidden areas, getting all the new abilities, the upgrades, and everything. And it's just a game that this has happened not very often, really, in terms of games that I've played. And it just took over my whole life to a degree. The other game I remember happening with is The Witness, which I don't talk about much anymore because of issues with the person who made it. But the Axiom Verge is just this. It's such a well-made modern retro game. Like we talk about these games that are like looking like they basically just copy the past. It is retro, but it didn't feel old. It felt new still. Like the sense of discovery was exciting and everything. Like it was just a really fun game. Music was brilliant. really great boss battles. And it's just that feeling that you're playing something and you, even though you know it's not true, you feel like you found something that other people haven't, because you've discovered this secret area. And like everyone, it's probably been designed in a way that everyone finds this in exactly the same way you did. And it's like, just makes you feel smart. But yeah, that is my pick, Axiom Verge. Brilliant.
Did you pick this knowing that, well, when we record this, the sequel to this game is out tomorrow? And by the time this goes live, obviously, it will have been out a couple of weeks.
I mean, Axiom 2's been out for a while, hasn't it?
Well, on Steam.
I think it's coming. I think I think it's coming. I think they're doing like a PS5 port with DualSense stuff, and it's probably coming to other platforms.
Did you play the sequel at all, Tom?
I did, but I didn't really. It didn't click. I don't know why, because I was actually looking forward to it far more than I was playing the original. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't. I just bounced off it really quite quickly.
I think that might have been the difference, because the first one came to you at a point where you weren't really expecting anything, and it was a nice surprise. But then your expectations were too heightened for the next one, and it
quite possibly. I whatever reason, I've played the sequel for probably about 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I was sat on my PC, because it came in, I think, possibly Epic or something. I can't remember what it was on. But,
it was an Epic exclusive. That's what I'm getting at. It's coming to other platforms and stuff.
I see,
now.
Right. Yeah. If it only releases on the Epic Store, has it actually released?
Wow.
Yeah. Basically.
But the sequel, it got good reviews, I think, and people like it, but it didn't click with me the same way the first game did. Maybe I'll give it a go at some point on a console when I'm sat in front of a TV playing it. But yeah, the first game, I recommend to everybody who says, I enjoy Metroidvanias, whatever, what would I like to play? Did give Axiom Verge a go. It's brilliant.
Did you play like Castlevania or anything like that when you were younger? Okay.
So this is the funny thing I was going to mention, is that when I think of clones, I don't tend to think of Metroid clones, because that genre, it comes from 2 games and no others. So everything in that genre, to a degree, is a Metroid or a Castlevania clone. And I feel like actually this game came out, although in fairness, I will say, in fairness to Axiom Verge, the guy who made Axiom Verge did literally work on a Metroid fan game.
Oh, right.
So, but like, I feel like at that period, like the early 2010s, there were quite a few of these games cropping up. Like the other one that I think of is Shadow Complex.
I was about to mention Shadow Complex.
I like Shadow Complex as well. Yeah,
also another Metroid clone in that era. It was like that.
Did you play Shadow Complex before this, Tom?
Yeah,
I'm guessing because it came out quite a while before.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. Yeah, I mean,
Shadow Complex is great. Yeah,
it feels like I like these kind of games, but then sometimes I really don't like. The what's the Silk song? What's the first one?
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight. Yeah, I know people love it, right? I can't get on with it at all. Like I just don't. I find it quite a confusing game to play for some reason. Whereas it's basically it's a similar setup, right? You've got this massive world that you discover. Retro style gameplay, Metroidvania type stuff, but I just couldn't get on with it at all, which feels weird because it's like the most celebrated game of its type in forever.
There's so many of these, and it's just like there's enough of them that like they're all pitched at like a very specific type of person.
Yeah.
So it's like I think there is a Metroidvania for everyone, even if you don't. It's not particularly a genre that you, because I don't particularly like Metroidvanias, but I loved Shadow Complex.
I was going to say, Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet is one of the ones that vibed with me. I don't know if anyone even remembers that one.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I feel like Xbox Live Arcade was like a great incubator for these games.
Tom, surely if there's any Metroidvania that you like, it's Tom Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Well, yeah, I do. I do love those games, particularly the second one. I think is incredible. I do really like the first game as well, although I went back to it and it felt not as tight as I remember it being. The second one is brilliant. Like I played it a lot, and that game is also one of those. Like it feels again like they've designed it in such a clever way that you find things almost it feels like on accident. You just stumble across this thing that you figured out, and actually they've just funneled you along in a clever way. So
I love that part of kind of video game kind of smoke and mirrors, though. Like well-designed video games can make everyone feel smart, and you've actually just been duped. So, I mean, it sounds to me like you do like Metroidvanias, Tom. You seem to have a long list of ones that you like.
A lot of them. I just don't like Shovel Knight. Hollow Knight. I don't like Shovel Knight, actually.
I don't like Shovel Knight either. Remember, Miller got obsessed with that.
Yeah. But yeah, Hollow Knight is the one game that I feel like I should love, but I don't. That's another topic. Best game you should love, but you don't.
Yeah, let's note them down because we're running out.
Yeah.
All right.
I've won this, right? That's done.
Axiom. It's a good pitch for Axiom Verge. I'm going to go with James next because is this a Diablo clone? I couldn't figure out what it was a clone of. Once again,
I've come up with a cunning plan, as always, to choose a genre, much like Tom, but with a bit of a different skew. That I've tried to pick a genre of game where the clones of the original are so copy and pasted from the original that they are nearly indistinguishable and therefore as good as the original. Yeah. And that is, as you say, the Diablo clone. Mm-hmm. So I've picked 2005 PSP launch title, Untold Legends Brotherhood of the Blade.
Oh, Jesus. God. What is this?
This is
unbelievable.
So it's
when I got your email,
Diablo
I was like, what?
On the greatest console of all time. You can make it the greatest handheld console of all time if you like. But really, to make a fantastic Diablo clone, you only need 4 things. And that is 1, furry armor. 2, dark fantasy hogwash story that makes absolutely not a lick of sense. 3, a loot system that goes green things uncommon, blue things rare, purple things slightly more rare, orange things legendary. And then thing 4, hit rat fall down. And that's all you need for 100 hours of just absolutely engrossing gameplay. It's perfect. It's just an incredible loop, and all of the clones do it just as well.
You know what? You're absolutely right. Even just from you describing loot tiers there, I got a sort of ghost serotonin hit just from imagining loot tiers. So
exactly,
it's a huge part of the appeal. So what is it about Untold Legends? Is it a particularly good Diablo clone, or is it just because of the PSP association? Because you love that.
Well,
concept?
To give you a sense of the incredible game that you're dealing with here, I'd like to read you the plot summary from Wikipedia. It's 3 sentences long.
Yeah.
Sentence 1. After emerging victorious from a tournament, the Guardian finds the city under attack by large spiders. All right. That's 1 sentence of 3.
That's pretty good as far as it goes. That is good.
It's a hell of a hook, isn't it?
It's a good opener, yeah. All right.
Pursuing through the sewers, that often underutilized video game location there, the Guardian discovers that benevolent ruler Kaylee and the overseer Lisetta have been corrupted by Pratox and a dark disease that twists their minds. So there you go. That's the dark fantasy hogwash. Yeah. Made up words, means nothing.
Absolutely meaningless drivel.
Absolutely meaningless. Couldn't do anything.
One of them's called Kaylee, did you say?
Yeah. But it's spelled Kaylee, so not right.
Is she from like Sacramento?
As we know from Game of Thrones, that's how you do good fantasy, spell normal names wrong. And in the final sentence, to give you a sense of the stakes on offer, after dealing with a series of threats, the Guardian is told that Kaylee has finally succumbed to the dark curse. Full stop. And that's the end. So,
and that takes 100 hours, does it?
If you do it with all the characters, yes. And that is just testament to how incredible and how engrossing these games are, that you press that square button. You press the square button and you watch the seconds tick away until you pick up the next one in 2 years' time when you go, I've not played a Diablo clone for ages, and then you lose another 100 hours.
Did
another
this
4
get
days
sequels?
of your life. What was that, sorry?
Did this get sequels, or was it a sequel? Or
it did get sequels. I think it had...
It was a PS3 game, right?
Yeah, there were three of them, 3 in the series, I think. It's by... the studio's called Daybreak now. It was originally the Sony Online Entertainment weird one that kind of made that kind of stole other people's MMOs for a bit.
Yeah.
I wonder if I reviewed this. I'm just going to type very annoyingly. You might hear it to see if I actually reviewed this game.
It's one of these ones. When I read the title, it was like I couldn't remember it, but there was definitely like a little scratch in the back of the brain. Like, have I played that? I might have completed that.
Was it called The Warrior's Code? Was that the one?
That's the sequel. That's the second
I reviewed
one.
the sequel, gave it a 6.
Yeah, the sequel's not quite as good, which slightly undermines my argument, but I'll pretend that I haven't said that. The sequel, there were lots of different sequels. They tried to spin it out into a bit more of a 3D kind of, you know how Castlevania had that Lords of Shadow game that was kind of a bit of a 6 out of 10 action game. I think they tried to do a similar thing.
Lords of Shadow is brilliant. It's amazing, Lords of Shadow.
Well, you should leave that. That's a good God of War clone, isn't it? But,
it's got Patrick Stewart in it, but other than that.
Yeah, but the real reason that I chose this is because I'm on a bit of a UMD hype recently.
Yeah.
I just remembered how cool UMDs were. Do you remember the little discs that used to slot into the?
They were quite cool, but also quite a pain.
Yeah,
but that was the good. That was the good bit, that they were rubbish and you lost them all the time, and
they were just they made the nice really click cool. When you closed it.
It was like like the Digivice. It was like a Digimon.
I like them when they used to come out spinning still. You like flick the back and like they're spinning around still. And then
I love UMDs because the concept is mental. And we're going to shrink an optical drive down to absurd proportions. It probably breaks the laws of physics. It definitely shouldn't work. How do you even focus the laser at that size? But also, like, it felt like the sort of disc format that you would have seen, like, imagined in like an 80s vision of what the 2000s was exactly. Gonna be. It felt like living in a retro future when you slotted one of those things in. It was like,
it's like mini disc, right? It's like you knew it was going to fail probably. But
I just have a great appreciation for any piece of disc-based technology where the user isn't trusted to have access to a raw disc, so it gets placed inside a lovely cumbersome plastic enclosure.
Yeah.
Obviously, in games, there weren't that many, but obviously there was the PSP and there was the 64DD and a couple of others. I got a lot of time for discs being put inside prisons.
Yeah. This is treating the audience like idiots.
Can we talk about this choice again? Because I've got some. I found the review on my old stomping ground.
You're talking about a different game, though?
Unfortunately, I found the original review.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of happenings, it's been written by admin and has no score.
So that migration worked then?
So let's assume it's 10 out of 10.
But my issue mainly is that I remember this game. It wasn't that good, right? That's a fact. B, there are so many other better Diablo clones than this one.
Says he of the mid Metroidvania. There are loads better Metroidvanias.
I thought you were going to choose when you said Diablo clone. I thought you were going to choose Titan Quest.
That's what I was just thinking. Titan Quest is an actual
it's all right, isn't it?
Classic, and it's been they keep trying to re-release it. I think like every other year. Let's just re-release Titan Quest for some reason.
Did that come out when I was alive?
Probably. I mean, yes. When was this? How old were you when this came out? Is that why you love it so much?
You're about 10 or 11.
Exactly. So it's like baby's first Diablo game.
Is it? You cannot make the argument that Untold Legends is better than Titan Quest, can you?
No. I can and I will. That's the whole conceit of this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, but do any of us believe you is the question.
Well, does the disc for Titan Quest shoot out like something out of the Fifth Element, still spinning, still hot, like it's in Akira or something? It doesn't, does it?
That's true, but that's a technicality. We can't allow that. The quite literally a technicality. Is Untold Legends better than Sacred 2?
Again, was I alive when that game came out?
Probably. It's not that old. It definitely came out like in this century.
Right.
Is that the bar? How old are you?
7 years old.
I'm quite surprised James didn't go for DreamWorks How to Train a Dragon Diablo clone that my son likes, because I mean
Skylanders.
Skylanders would have been a better choice, actually.
Skylanders is a really good Diablo clone, actually.
It is. It is. It just you saying that like broke a memory because we used to cover Skylanders as an RPG set, which is such a weird thing, but it was baby's first Diablo.
There you go, James.
Yeah,
get it right next time.
Minecraft
I did
Legends.
think about using the Shrek 2 game as a clone of like Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg or something. I don't know.
I feel bad now because we're now just reeling off Diablo clones, most of which are probably shite and basically.
I think
the
there's
same.
far better Metroid clones than
Axiom Verge is top
Axiom
quality.
Verge,
You look on Metacritic. Go on.
All right. So Donaldson is convinced that there are better Metroid clones than Axiom
What's
Verge
his game?
and better Diablo clones than Untold Legends.
It's an JRPG clone. Let's have a look.
It's not, and it's not. Alex's choice is an incredible example of the clone. I would argue that at least I would argue for a time that Alex's is an example of a clone game that for a while surpassed the original in infamy, if nothing else.
But I tell you what, Tom, I'll give you a JRPG clone as a bonus. Because when I was making the choice for this, I was choosing between two games. Because when you say video game clone to me, two games come to mind. The one is, I think, one of the definitive video game clones, which I'll come on to, which is my actual choice. But the other one is one where I have a personal experience of it, which was in the PS2 and Xbox era, EA released a Lord of the Rings game called Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. And The Third Age is a Western-made RPG, but it is a clone gameplay, beat for beat, of Final Fantasy X. To the point where, at the time that this game came out in 2004, I was a teenager running a Final Fantasy fan site, and EA paid us to make a Lord of the Rings: The Third Age fan site and pump up the game to the Final Fantasy fans, basically. And run a load of adverts.
I cannot believe how long you've been active in the games media for someone.
Yeah,
you're like 10 years younger than me. Like you're like 9 years old when EA were paying you to make a fan site.
I would have been 15 to be fair, but yeah. And Mike, who is still my business partner, who is a bit older than me, he went out to the studio and did a studio tour and all sorts. So they were
Did his mum have to go with him? Did he have to take his parents?
He's a few years older than me. So he was 17 or 18, I think. But like legitimately, like EA was so all in on the being a Final Fantasy clone that they were legitimately approaching Final Fantasy fan sites and paying them for advertising or to create sponsored content about their Final Fantasy clone.
I mean, I think that means that probably would have been a good choice, but unfortunately it was not your choice.
I wanted to pick this because I think this is interesting, because when I think video game clone, I think often the term is used in a really derogatory way, and I think this game is interesting because everybody called it a clone. It was called a clone in all the magazines, it was called a clone in the arcades, it was called a clone on the early internet. But the truth is, it wasn't actually a clone. And that game is Mortal Kombat.
Let's just... Well, stop you there. Because this is called a clone of another game. You just said...
This episode is called... This episode is called the best game that was called a clone of another game. This game was widely called a clone everywhere. What actually happened with MK is that the guys, Ed Boon and company at NetherRealm, well, it wasn't NetherRealm then, but at Midway... they had wanted to make a fighting game forever, and they'd basically been told no. And then Street Fighter 2 came out, was a huge success, and at that point it was given the green light by the powers that be, and they went and made the game they wanted to make. Now, Street Fighter had a huge influence on it, no question, but they have always said there was like a 1982 or 1983 or 82, 83 or 84 game called Karate Champ made by Data East, and they've always said that is the genesis of Mortal Kombat. But that didn't matter. At that point in the 90s, it was like Sonic versus Mario. It was Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and because Street Fighter was first, everybody called Mortal Kombat a Street Fighter clone. Yeah, and then you ended up with the crazy sort of snowball of events where then you end up with Mortal Kombat gets a movie, so then Street Fighter has to have a movie, and then they want to make a game out of the Street Fighter movie, so the Street Fighter movie game, they digitized the film characters in the same way they did for Mortal Kombat, so then Street Fighter itself made a Mortal Kombat clone, even though Street Fighter was supposedly the originator.
This is a tangled web.
It was this whole 90s mess of, and like Jim said, it absolutely, you ended up in this scenario where for a long time Street Fighter was king, and then MK surpassed it. And really, when you talk about the modern age, people still view them as the two, right? And as copies of each other. And it's interesting because Mortal Kombat is the game that sells. Every Mortal Kombat game comes out, sells 10 million copies. And Street Fighter is the game that people respect in a weird way. Street Fighter is the game where people go, that's the king of fighting games. Even though
Street
it's
Fighter
outsold.
not sell as much as Mortal Kombat?
So Street Fighter 5, I think, is probably somewhere over 5-6 million copies now, but that is still like only 60% of what Mortal Kombat sells.
It's like the Mortal Kombat comes out, and every sort of middle-aged Gen Xer who remembers it from when they were a kid is like, I'll play a bit of Mortal Kombat.
But the flip
He's
side
probably
is...
shite at it, and then...
Yeah, well, and also they've got those big story modes, and people come and just play those story modes. They treat it like a shooter. They play the story mode.
And you got the Injustice offshoot as well, so that's...
but like, then you look at the other side, and like in tournaments and stuff, Street Fighter 5 still has a really strong tournament scene 5-6 years later, and Mortal Kombat, no one's really playing it anymore. So you end up in that weird... They both have their little zone of fighting games that they own. But yeah, I mean, I would absolutely say this is, in my opinion... Unless you're going to get into the territory of is Sonic a Mario clone, or get into the territory of looking at fucking Jazz Jackrabbit or whatever, where there were loads of platformer clones or Mario clones back in the day, but they were all quite different, really.
Zool. Let's talk about Zool.
Yeah, so Zool was more of a Sonic clone, right? Because Zool was fast. But anyway, my point is, I think this is like the first example of a really high-profile clone where everywhere that was the exact word on everybody's lips at the time.
I think it's a good choice, actually. I think you've picked well, but my concern here is that Mortal Kombat actually was a bit shit.
Yeah, see, this is where it falls down, I think, because Mortal Kombat is shite. If we're talking about the first game,
particularly when most of us played it, which was probably on a
I disagree
console.
in terms of the first game in the series. I mean, definitely, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is the best one, and like there is a progression of every game in that series got better until the third one, and then it went downhill for a long time, and then they brought it back in a big way, like recently. But a lot of that was down to really poor console ports. A lot of that was down to really bastardized console ports. A lot of that was down to the console hardware at the time not being able to handle those digitized photos very well. I think the original arcade version of MK was excellent. Now, it isn't as good as its later sequels.
I seem to remember, Alex, you tripping Tom up when he was talking about...
I was just about to bring up Operation Wolf and
Operation Wolf.
I think the arcade game is wonderful, and you had a gun.
But what I was saying in that episode was that you were calling this game out for being, the worst port, the worst version, whatever. And I was saying it looks like an alright version, but also the problem that you had is that you were playing this light gun game with a controller.
Yeah,
and that was the big problem.
But is that substantially different from playing Mortal Kombat on an Amiga 500?
No, it's exactly the same.
I mean, I think so, because also I think the topic, it's not about the best version of the game. It's about the best game that was called a clone of another game. And naturally, I'm going to take the best version of that game as the example to hold up on this episode. You were talking very specifically about your Master System version of Operation Wolf.
You were making a specific point, Tom, about Master System.
I'm talking about Mortal Kombat in general, and like I say, I'm not going to deny that 2 is better than 1 and 3 is better than the pair of them. But as far as MK goes, I think there is an argument for the console, especially the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat 1 in particular, is shocking on many levels. Not just ripping the blood out, it just doesn't run very well, all the rest. And then the Mega Drive version's got problems too. And then there were all the horrific versions on Game Gear, and I think there was a version for the Game Com. I mean, remember that?
No.
Like the Game Com, I think it was like a Mattel game console, and it was almost diabolically bad. And, you know, there were versions of Street Fighter for all these bloody platforms as well, because that was the thing there in this tit-for-tat war. But when I'm talking about Mortal Kombat, I'm talking about the first game that came out, it hit arcades, and all the magazines were saying there's this sick new game in arcades, it's a Street Fighter clone.
Yeah.
The word of mouth spread through kids. It's a Street Fighter clone, but you can rip someone's head off. And that is why I pick it for this episode, because
it was definitely called a clone, right? Now, I need to do the sting for me having to pick something. Right. I need to pick something now. And the question I want to ask, and it really hangs in the balance, right? Tom's not going to win. It's between James and Alex.
What?
The question that this all hangs on is, James, can you come up with substantial evidence that Untold Legends was described as a Diablo clone at the time?
I've not gone through all of the reviews, but it is so obviously a Diablo clone if you actually watch the gameplay from the perspective that it's played at. From the sheer amount of giant spiders and rats that you have to hit on the head with a hammer. It obviously is a Diablo clone, but was it known as, like, did it have a rivalry with Diablo? Was it? Tom's brought up the reviews, the contemporary reviews. I would argue that they were depressed considerably at the time because of comparisons. And I do remember at the time reading in OPS2 or whatever that it's like that it was dismissed at the time as a Diablo clone or whatever.
I want to say, why is Axiom
all right?
Verge
I mean, the very
excluded
first
from this, Jim?
I've just because Axiom Verge it's
the best game of all of these.
It's
they're all like Untold Legends, 6 out of 10. Mortal Kombat, I mean, maybe a 5 if you're lucky. I mean, Axiom Verge is solid 9.
The thing I will say is that there is no way that Untold Legends is better than Mortal Kombat 1, even if you're saying that Mortal Kombat 1...
Which would you rather play right now?
Mortal Kombat 1.
I would definitely rather play Untold Legends. I'd tell
on the PSP, and you get claw hands, and you can't.
I would rather play Untold Legends on the PSP than I would play Mortal Kombat on fucking NN. Right? Yeah, Axiom Verge is just out because I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I've just googled. Untold Legends Brotherhood of the Blade Diablo clone. Can't even say it. And in the top 2 links, there are people in forums calling it a Diablo clone, and the Reddit thread right at the top of it starts with the words, "It is a pretty solid Diablo clone." So I'm going to take
this
that.
This is not called pretty solid game. That's called a nice
I'm going to take that as the weight of public opinion, and I'm going to give it to James this week.
This is the most shocking thing you've ever done.
Untold Legends Brotherhood of the Blade is the best game that was called a clone of another game. We found evidence that people called it a clone way back in 2015. And my reasoning, right, is that Mortal Kombat, Alex made a brilliant pitch for Mortal Kombat, but it falls down at the point where Mortal Kombat, rubbish, innit? Axiom Verge...
Just because you're ignorant, is that what this is about?
I mean, your own pitch seemed to suggest that it wasn't even the best Metroidvania you've ever played, and I think Shadow Complex is better.
Whatever.
Well, that's. I mean, I might have put words in your mouth there, but I'm gonna allow it. And I would argue, right? And James has picked a genre where he could have picked any fucking Diablo clone because they're all as good as each other. They're all as good as each other. You could throw any of them in there. You could have said Sacred 2 or Sacred 3, which is rubbish, but it's a Diablo clone. It's as compelling as every other Diablo clone. Could have gone with Titan Quest. Could have gone with Minecraft Legends, is it? That's the Diablo clone that my kids play.
Better.
Yeah, it's quite good, that, actually.
There we go. He's just...
I think I'm going to allow it.
Let's just get this over with. I've had enough.
James's first win. There we go.
Oh, dear.
Thank you for taking pity on me.
Feel robbed again.
Like I said, you will find out. out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.